Today we are making homemade sauerkraut. Seriously simple and delicious. I usually start by peeling my cabbage and taking off any dead leaves, anything that doesn't look like I want to eat it. Start with a little trim, peeling off the outer leaves and using those for compost or in your garden somehow. Typically take off anything that I would not like to eat. I know that's one of those things. There's an area that I actually am going to trim off. It looks like it got roughed up in shipping or in packaging. I also rinse my cabbage, and later if I see it needs rinsing again, I will repeat this step. I'm going to start by cutting the head of cabbage with the stem down, cutting it in half very, very carefully, using a sharp knife and keeping your fingers back. I'm going to cut my cabbage into quarters so that I can get the heart or the stem, the big part in the center, out pretty easily. I like to do this as I quarter apples or any other type of food. I take my knife on an angle and just cut out that center on each of the quarters. Makes removing the core really easy. That's not something that you would really want to eat. It's kind of too hard and too firm. I actually dislike cutting cabbage and cauliflower for the same reason. It tends to kind of fall apart and make a mess. But you can also do this with store-bought shredded cabbage if that's something that you would rather try. You'll see I'm just separating these into thin strips that are kind of short. And I'm going to show you something that I like to do with my kids when they were little. I'm chopping up most of these, but you'll also see me make some long and thin strips that can be torn by hand. Sometimes the littles just want to be involved. They want to learn. So I have a separate bowl I will set aside that my granddaughter can get her hands in and learn while doing. And that's all that kids really want to do. They want to contribute in some way and feel like their contribution is valued. So it's a really quick way to let them feel included and let them start learning in the kitchen. I'm going to continue to cut and shred this cabbage. You can do it in a variety of ways. I just do it with a knife really quickly. A lot of people, if you like your finer, you could even use a vegetable peeler. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you don't have to see me just cutting cabbage. But this is the little bowl I would set aside for my granddaughter or my children when they were little, just to let them shred by hand. It doesn't hurt anything. They can wash their little hands, not make a big mess, and have a contribution. Many times when a young child participates in cooking or creating something, they're a little bit more likely to try it and eat it. Here I am measuring out the salt. Before the cabbage was shredded, I did weigh it. The shredded cabbage came out to 1,120 grams, and to maintain a 2% salt to cabbage ratio, I will input 24 grams of salt. So the 2% ratio is all you need to remember. Working with that original bowl, I'm going to separate the cabbage and kind of squish it around in my hands, make sure no clumps are stuck together, and I'm going to begin layering the cabbage with those 24 grams of salt. A little bit of cabbage and rubbing it. Rubbing the cabbage starts to bring out the natural juices. This recipe is cabbage and salt and nothing else. So really giving that cabbage a rub and a squish and a scrub, and it is very taxing on the arms and the shoulders, but this process makes your sauerkraut work. This brings out the natural juices in the cabbage and begins allowing the cabbage to start that fermentation process that we're looking for. Layers of cabbage and salt, and continuously squishing and crushing the cabbage and mixing that salt in. Generally, I leave mine in this quarter-size hotel pan to let it start developing the juices before I put it in a jar. So you'll see me doing this squishing and mashing and kneading process for quite some time. There is my ratio of salt to cabbage. 2% salt comes out to 24.4 grams. And you can see as the cabbage starts to wilt down and the salt is starting to draw out the liquid. This recipe calls for nothing more than cabbage and salt. Sometimes I do like to include a little bit of celery seed just for the flavor. I really enjoy the flavor that that gives. I'm going to take the cabbage that has been sitting for several hours and wring it out and pack it into a swing top jar. So I'm going to squeeze all the liquid out that I can and really push down and pack that cabbage in so there are no big air spaces. We want the cabbage to ferment. We also want it to stay under the liquid. So pack in the jars really tightly, and then making sure that everything is down inside the jar. There's no remnants of cabbage on the outside, inside of the jar at the top above the water line. And this takes a little bit of doing, but as you can see, the cabbage compacts pretty well. I usually do this in batches of 2 or 3 heads of cabbage at one time, and all of that liquid, that salty liquid, will go in on top of the cabbage and act as a barrier to let the cabbage ferment. Here I have just a regular Ziploc full of water, just room temperature water with the air squeezed out, and I'm going to put that right down on top of the cabbage and the liquid. That helps the cabbage to stay under the level of the liquid. And then I cover it lightly with plastic wrap, and my swing top lid is not locked down, but it is left unlocked so that the fermentation gases can escape. Let your cabbage ferment for 1 to 4 weeks, taste it along the way, and see where you want to stop it at.